So if you want, I can go ahead and get started and kind of give a general overview, and people can trickle in as they want to. And then I can turn it over to you, Kate, to officially kick us off, if you'd like.
Sure.
So I guess just a little background. This group was effectively started, I think Kate came by one of my open office hours, and we had a discussion last year, right? We were talking about the Mountain Park area, and you're talking about the stuff that she wanted to see as far as improvements around that intersection. And we've been talking lately, and really the idea is that Mountain Park is not necessarily a zip code, or whether it's Mountain Park isn't a city on your address. And a lot of people don't even know if they're, everybody's got a city for their address, but they may or may not be in the incorporated city limits. And so if you are in an incorporated city limits, the city's there to provide a lot of resources and a lot of economic development. If you're in the middle of a CID, you also have similar efforts and organizations to kind of help the neighborhood in the area. But if you're unincorporated, you have to go to the county for any issues you have. And so one of the things we've been trying to do countywide is to really give more of a sense of community to our neighborhoods. So, we've got the Liberty Heights neighborhood, Danbury Village kind of neighborhood. And so Mountain Park is really, again, another neighborhood. So if you think of downtown Atlanta, you've got Buckhead, you've got Midtown, you've got Ponce Highlands, you've got Old Fourth Ward. None of those are cities in their own right. They're all part of the city of Atlanta, but they're all neighborhoods with a very distinct character and a very distinct community that's supporting them. So we were talking, and the Mountain Park community is definitely deserving of that kind of organization. And one of the things I noticed while I was running and when I was out in the community is that there's an organization in Peachtree Corners before they became an official city that was called the United Peachtree Corners Civic Association, or UPCCA. And they did a lot of stuff. They ran candidate forums, they organized people, they organized businesses. So they functioned a lot like a CID and a lot like a city as far as, getting the pieces and the players together, the neighborhoods organized, and that was when they were unincorporated. Obviously, then they became a city, and so that took over a lot of the duties that UPCCA did. Somebody
on the last one.
Here, I'll go ahead and mute everybody just in case.
No, you just called in. Oh,
there we go. All right. So if you need to unmute, you can. But So the UPCCA is an organization of both neighbors, individual neighbors, neighborhoods and HOAs, and businesses. So they all pay membership dues, and they're very low. I mean, I think an individual due is $10 a year. So it's very nominal. But by having dues, having bylaws, and an organization, they are able to affect a lot of change, have a say in the business community and the development that happens, and they can serve as a liaison to the county to get any of the community needs addressed and focused on. So that's what Kate and I were discussing, and I think that would probably be a great model for the Mountain Park Community Association. With that, I think that kind of gives the background of why we have this group. And we started, I think mid last year, I think we started having meetings.
Yeah, our first meeting was in November. And
okay, so
I
later
remember
last year.
it was a Friday and it was kind of cold and rainy. And you said, if we get 12 people, it'll be a success. And we had 82.
Yep.
And
So I was very impressed with that, and it shows all the passion and the energy that you all have for your community, and that's great. And as the county commissioner, again, I want to represent everybody. I know, and the north end of the district has gotten lots of attention. Again, I've mentioned Peachtree Corners. They have had a lot of attention. Our previous district commissioner was from Peachtree Corners, so of course there was lots of attention there. But I do live in the unincorporated area, right about in the middle, so not too far from Mountain Park. One of my planning commissioners is in the Mountain Park area, and has been doing a great job to kind of champion the unincorporated areas and be that voice for communities that typically haven't been getting that kind of representation. So I'm very excited that this group is organizing. I'm doing everything I can to help facilitate that and make sure that you guys have the resources you need. So I am quite excited to see this get off the ground and come to fruition.
Well, thank you, Ben. So you want me to take it now?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'm Kate Pittman, and I'm going to introduce our speaker. But before I do that, I wanted to tell you about some of the things that we've been doing. We've had 2 meetings, like I said. We had a meeting in November, and then we had a meeting in February. And we had about 80, just short of 80 at that one. And what's interesting is they weren't the same 80. So that's good. And then through Nextdoor, I've gotten, it's just right about 100 people that have joined. And I'm looking at the Bonadlowskis. I want to tell you, we don't have your email address, but I'm glad you found us. So anybody, if you're not on our email list, we have a new email. You can send it to my old email, but it'll get sent to the new one. And it's an abbreviation, but the organization is the association. So it's MTN for mountain, PARK for park, and then CA for community association. And then that's at gmail.com. So you can do that, or we have the web page, which that very first night, I had people coming up and said they volunteer, and a man, Henry Howard, came up and said, I'll set you up a web page. And so we still have this same address. It's gone through some changes, thanks to Jordan, I know your name, Bukowski. And that address is Mountain Park. I've got it right here, and I'm not finding it because I've got too many notes. It is Mountain Park Community. That's it. So it's three words all run together, mountainparkcommunity.us. And that email I gave you is on there. There's a lot of things on that web page. Looks pretty good. We've got a Facebook page and a Facebook group. And on the group, we have 293 members. And that's not necessarily people we have email addresses for. And then I just want to let you know that our next meeting is scheduled August 20th. And then another one after that, October 5th. If you have ideas for speakers and things that you want us to address, feel free to send a note with your ideas. And one of the people, I don't know if Lauren's on here tonight, but talked about maybe having a candidate forum, after this election and when we get candidates. So that's an idea. Right now it's set up to be at the Mountain Park Aquatic Center. But, if we're in the same situation, we'll change it to be virtual. And Ben had said that he could foresee a future in which it's a hybrid, where some people want to stay at home and do this, and some people want to show up. And so it can be a little of both. And we're learning as we go. So I wanted to read to you the mission of the, and this is it. We haven't formalized it, as Ben said. It's not a formal organization yet, but we'd like you to help us do that. So the Mountain Park Community Association, MPCA, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan civil organization existing to serve residents and businesses in our area. Membership comprises subdivisions, individuals, and businesses who share the desire to protect and enhance quality of life here. We monitor and communicate land use, rezoning, development, transportation, public safety, and other issues significant to our community, and represent area constituents to governments where united action is needed. We organize to define and represent a unified community voice. And on that, I do want to say that this is not, there are no solid boundaries. Some people that live in DeKalb County, I like in Smoke Rise, they do business at the Five Forks Rockbridge Commercial District. And I'm kind of thinking of Five Forks as being sort of a backbone to the area, and people live all around it. We go shopping in every different direction. But the idea kind of is to think of if your grocery store at that intersection were to go out of business, how do you feel about it? And I think, no, it can't go out of business. So I think these are the areas that we support. So right now I'm kind of concentrating between Killian Hill and Rockbridge, but there are no limits because we're not, since we're not necessarily in a city, some of us are and some of us aren't, we need to have a say-so. And instead of, and I think Nextdoor is a great platform, but it's not going to solve problems if you don't like the way things are happening. Doing a group like this will get things done instead of just grousing on a web platform. So that being said, I'd like to introduce Corporal, right? Corporal Selena Francis, and she's with the Crime Prevention Unit of the Gwinnett County Police. She's in charge, I think you're in charge of the COPS program, is that right? And you've got you muted, so you can, okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and Selena grew up in the Mountain Park area. Her parents still live here. She graduated from Parkview, and she's got 3 children. And she and her husband live in, did you say Grayson or?
Yes.
Okay, and so I'm going from memory because I'm so organized that I can't find my stuff. But so anyway, you know exactly where we live and what's going on here. And I'd say it's probably a pretty quiet little neighborhood. I also want to mention that, I don't know if he's on here yet, but Major McDowell is the South Precinct Commander. And I assume he's your boss. Is he your boss, Selena?
Yes, he's here.
And he's here, okay.
Yes.
And he also grew up, and I think he said he graduated from Mountain Park High School, as did the officer that was at the meeting last time was Sergeant Killian, and he also graduated from Parkview. So I think we're in good hands. So do you want to add anything to your introductions, Officer Francis?
No, that sounds fine.
Okay. Now she did tell me she's been with the Gwinnett County Police for 20 years, mostly as a cruising the roads and doing what she's doing right now during the pandemic. And she's been in the COPS, or the Crime Prevention program, for 2 years. She teaches self-defense. She gives talks at senior centers and daycares, and she teaches senior safety, to little kids, stranger danger, and that sort of thing. So she's had a pretty good career, I think. So I don't do interviews for a living. So I made up a list, and I actually did share it with Selena. John Strange had posted on several platforms asking people to submit questions that they wanted to ask the officer. And so from that, I kind of came up with categories. And if your question is not answered, then when at some point, I don't know, you could raise your hand or interrupt, unmute yourself. But the first topic is road traffic and pedestrian safety. So there's kind of a lot of things here, and I'll just do it. We have speeding, of course, on main thoroughfares. It's very dangerous, through neighborhoods, and then we have cut-through traffic. Is there anything we can do about that? Oh, we are muted. There you go.
Okay. So here at the South Precinct, speeding is one of the most common complaints that we receive. We do have officers during their shift that they do run laser and radar, but that's also in addition to responding to their calls for service or 911 calls. When it comes to speeding also, the state of Georgia restricts how and where we use speed detection devices. They give us a list of roadways that are approved for us to run these speed detection devices on and requirements. And some of those requirements are being visible at minimum 500 feet. There's also a requirement that we cannot issue citations unless they're speeding at least 11 miles per hour over the speed limit. So here in Gwinnett County, we usually give the drivers a 15-mile-an-hour over the speed limit before we'll take any type of action. With that being said, when it comes to our subdivisions and our neighborhoods, sometimes these roads are not listed or legally set up for us to be able to run these speed detection devices because the specifications by the state are not met by these roads. So it makes it kind of hard for us to run the speed detection devices in the subdivisions. But some of the things that we can do here at the South Precinct, we have 2 speed monitor displays. And those are the signs that lets the person know how fast they're speeding. These displays provide data for us. So we can go back and look at this data and see how fast or how slow, the fastest or the slowest on this roadway, and it also gives us time frame. So if there's a situation where we see during this particular time we're having speeders, we can use this data and have our officers in the area if we need the officers physically there to kind of monitor what's going on. So even though we're not able to use the speed devices, we do have other measures that we can take. Another thing that we have for South Precinct that was set up by my Major Trap McDowell, we have 2 officers that are specifically assigned to handle speeding and traffic complaints within the district. So these officers usually work Monday through Friday, daytime hours, and what you can do if you are having some type of complaint, you can call into me or to our non-emergency number. You'll give us the complaint in the intersection and we can set up what we call a COAP, which is a check often as possible. So these 2 officers will kind of hang out and monitor to see what's going on as far as your complaint. And if they need to, they'll stop people and issue warnings. And if they need to, they can also issue citations. And this is not just for speeding, this is also for stop sign violations and that type of thing.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Now, one of the things, and this was later, and maybe this isn't the right time to bring it up, but some of us are in the city and some of us in the county. How does that work?
Okay, so the city of Lilburn has their own police department, and then the county has their police department, and we actually have a map that sets up boundaries. So Lilburn knows what their jurisdiction is. So if they get dispatched a call, you know, it's going to tell them where the call is, that type of thing. So we have just a map that's drawn up for the city, and not just Lilburn, it's also for Snellville. Who else do we have out here? Snellville, Duluth. Like the city police have their own jurisdiction. So sometimes you may be within incorporated or the unincorporated. So like we said, Gwinnett County handles all of the unincorporated. The thing about Lilburn Police Department, they're actually dispatched by Gwinnett County dispatchers. And sometimes we'll share a radio with the Lilburn Police Department and we're able to hear the things that are going on in their jurisdiction. So if something were to happen in Lilburn and we're here and we're close, we're actually able to assist them if they need our assistance. But there are 2 separate jurisdictions.
Okay, so you just call the same number and the dispatcher will figure it out.
Yes, when you dial 911, it should hit on the proper towers, and if it's really close, they'll figure it out.
Okay, thank you. And then we have just gotten more center turn lanes on some of our major thoroughfares. Some of them we've had a while, and some of them are fairly new, and they're being used as passing lanes. This seems very dangerous. I know that's not what they're made for. Is there anything we can do about that?
Unfortunately, all traffic violations that occur have to be witnessed by the officer before they can issue any type of citation. So if you were to call us and say, hey, this car went around, unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to cite that person if we didn't witness the violation personally. If it's a situation where you see it's a common thing, we also may be able to set up a COAP check often as possible for the intersection. If you know that it's going on constantly, we can sit there and monitor and see if we need to have an officer there more frequently to make stops or issue citations.
That's good. So I'm thinking that some of these things, some of the solutions might actually go to a different department. So like maybe the Department of Transportation could put, I don't know if people like this, but put those plastic posts to keep people from using them that way.
That's correct. That would be the Department of Transportation.
Okay, so between us and working with BenQ, we could figure out how to fix that or how to make it less. Let's see, and then the same, I guess some of these things, the same thing with like people running stop signs in the neighborhood, underage driving, like motorcycles in the neighborhood. What do people do?
If you have a situation where you see underage children driving motorcycles, you can give us a call the moment that you see the violation occurring, because once again, we have to be able to witness the violation. So we want you to call the police immediately, because if you call after the fact or the day after, there's really no enforcement that we can take based on hearsay. So if you do see something of that nature, just give us a call immediately. You can dial the 911 number and we'll address the situation and speak to the parents.
Okay. Somebody, they probably don't live where I live. They live a little closer to 78. They said that there's drag racing and stunt driving and drifting and stuff in the Park Place Shopping Center near Highway 78. Have you heard anything about that and what's going on?
I have not heard anything personally in reference to the drag racing, but once again, that would be a situation where if you see something, say something. You need to call the police immediately without hesitation. When you hesitate, there's a chance that if you had called sooner, we could be there to address the situation, to issue citations if we needed to. But yes, just remembering to not hesitate to call us immediately when those incidents are occurring.
I think that a lot of people are reluctant to call 911. And this is a question I was going to ask later, but it'd be appropriate now. When should we call the police and which number should we use and why?
Okay, so our slogan for crime prevention, if you see something, say something, and we mean it. If something doesn't seem right or something makes you uncomfortable or the hairs are standing up in the back of your neck or you know that something is out of place, don't hesitate to call the police. We want you to call and have us investigate to confirm that everything is okay. So we would rather have you call and it be absolutely nothing than to not call and it turns into something really bad or something that could have been prevented if the police were there. So the difference between, we do have a non-emergency number. I don't know if anybody has a pen and wants to write it down, but Gwinnett County's non-emergency number is 770-513-5700.
Okay.
So, I tell everyone, if there's a situation where you were disconnected from the dispatcher and you would want someone to call you back in case of an emergency, that's going to be the 911. When you call 911 and get disconnected from the operators are going to call you back. If they're not able to get you on the phone when they call back, they're going to send an officer to the location to figure out what's going on and why you're not answering the phone. When you dial the non-emergency number, it goes to the same operators, but it's handled differently. So with the non-emergency number, if you were to get disconnected, that's it. You just get disconnected. They're not going to call back, and they're not going to come looking for you. So how do you know the difference between or when to use one or the other? I tell everyone, if it's happening right now and you see it, whether it's a suspicious vehicle or a suspicious person, an accident, if it's happening right now and we need the police there immediately, that's going to be 911. If there's a situation where you just have a question or you're following up on a report, you're reporting something that happened previously, just not at that moment, that's going to be the non-emergency number.
Okay, so people have permission to call the police. 911, they won't get in trouble.
You're not going to get in trouble, and if you can't remember the non-emergency number, 911 is still perfectly fine.
Okay. Let's see, and I'd like to know, okay, this is another one about crime. And again, these are from people that are in the community. They said, why don't we see patrol cars in our neighborhood?
The thing is, our patrol officers actually do patrol the neighborhoods, but once again, they do that as much as possible, but that's in addition to responding to calls for service, the 911 calls. So they're definitely in there, but it may be at a time where you're not looking out the window, or maybe it's in the evening times. But as much as possible, our officers do area checks within the communities. A lot of time, if there's not a lot of crime or not a lot of activity, which is a great thing, you may see officers a little less in the community, which is a great thing to have. Less crime, less officers.
So if you see a lot of officers, that might mean something's going on, so better not to see you. And you'll show up if we call. So
Yes.
there's another one that was about car break-ins and follow-up. It says, why don't the police check for fingerprints in these incidents? And sometimes the police don't show up to investigate.
So actually finding fingerprints on a vehicle can be a very hard thing. If you look at the surfaces that are inside the vehicle, they're textured. So if someone were to actually touch the steering wheel, I know the steering wheel in my vehicle, it's actually textured. So it would disrupt being able to pull an actual fingerprint from things like that on the vehicle. Unless you've cleaned your car recently, if I were to touch a window or a vehicle in some kind of way, the oil from my finger is going to collect the dirt, which is going to stop my fingerprint. It might have a print, but there won't be my fingerprint because it's collected the dirt on the vehicle. So even though there's a mark, there may not actually be a print. But every report that's taken for entering autos, it is sent to our investigators, every single report. And it depends on what type of evidence that we have in reference to that break-in. So if someone enters your vehicle and they still, just for an example, a cup holder full of change, we don't have a way to track your change and to know that's your change if we were to come in contact with someone. So it would be really hard for the investigator to investigate, even if it were dollars, unless you wrote down the serial numbers to each of the dollars that you had in your car, which we should not be leaving money in our cars. It would be hard to track that money back to you. If there's a situation, say there's a laptop or something with a serial number or model number, that's something that they can definitely look into, because our investigators actually go out to the pawn shops and they compare the serial numbers and model numbers to the things that have been reported, not only for entering autos, but for burglaries. So it just all depends on what information we have. And if there is an incident where you're calling to report an entering auto and you do see a handprint or a fingerprint that doesn't belong to you, you can request that the officer come out and we'll take a look and see if we have anything. And if we have something, we will call CSI to take the prints. I know I had an incident where someone broke into a vehicle and they broke the window and they actually cut themselves. That was enough evidence for our CSI to come out and collect blood, and they were actually able to make an arrest based on the data that we had. So they do come out when we have enough evidence to.
I can imagine if you have a lot of break-ins in one area, then you would patrol more often there too.
Entering autos are a crime of convenience, and it happens anywhere and everywhere. So it's not one particular neighborhood or one particular street. It's just about the availability and the moment that they're able to do it. So one thing everybody has to remember, we have a crime triangle, and what you need in the crime triangle, you have to have a victim, a suspect, and opportunity. And your goal is to get rid of the opportunity so the suspect cannot make you a victim. And by that, you have to remember you shouldn't leave things inside of your vehicle. You should lock your cars even when you're home and roll up your windows and not leave these things out in the open where they can be seen. I tell everyone, your car should appear the way it did when you drove it off the car lot. That means nothing exposed, just clean and clear, and not drawing attention to the inside. This means the change in the cup holder and even our car chargers.
Okay. Moving on to neighborhood nuisance issues. Some of these things we'd like to solve the problem, but at the same time maintain a friendly relationship with our neighbor, or we don't want to risk reprisals. So this could be things like a house with cars coming and going at all hours.
So anytime you dial 911, you can request to remain anonymous. You're not required to provide your information if you don't want. It helps the officers in their investigations to be able to speak with you, but if you call anonymously, we're still going to come out to the location and check it out. If there's a situation where you think the cars are coming and going and it may be drug related, we actually have an anonymous narcotic tip line. And if you would like, I will also provide this number. The number is 770-513-5480. So if you call the tip line, you're going to provide as much information as possible about the activities that you see, maybe a description of the people or the vehicles that you see. If you have an address that you can provide, and even a description of the house, so we know exactly what we're looking for. And our investigators, they're the ones that actually check the tip line, so the information is going straight to them. So whatever you can provide, that would be great. In addition to the drug tip line, we also have just the general crime tip line. That number is going to be 770-513-5390. And that's just for the general crimes that may be going on and you want to remain anonymous. But remember, if it's in progress, we're not calling the tip line, we're calling 911.
Good point. Now, I think we need to keep reviewing that it's okay to call 911.
We want to call 911.
What do we do if we have houses in our neighborhood where they have a lot of litter and junk, or they have cars parked in the yard?
Okay, a lot of people don't know this, but Gwinnett County has a quality of life unit. It's a unit that actually goes out to these locations they'll give them a warning, hey, you need to cut your grass, or you need to fix your fence, or you can't have junk cars or outdoor storage. And they'll issue these warnings, and they'll come back and follow up on the warnings. And if things aren't taken care of, they're able to issue citations and to go to court. But I have the number for the quality of life, and this has everything to do with maintaining your properties and your businesses, that type of thing. Quality of life's number 770-513-5004.
Okay. And we'll eventually put these up on our webpage, but it's good to keep them to do this right now. Things like multiple residents living in a single home, family home.
That's also an issue that quality of life would be able to take care of.
How about things like dogs? I got two things. One is dogs that bark all the time, and another with dogs that are running loose.
Okay, If the dog is aggressive and growling, you need to dial 911. If it's a situation where the dog is just running loose, you can call our non-emergency number, or you can even contact animal control directly at 770-339-3200.
Okay. And let's see. Oh, another one, I've seen this a lot if people are in next door, that people say they hear gunshots in their neighborhood. Lots of posts on Nextdoor about it. And is there, I mean, I've never heard it, but I'm sure if you think you're hearing gunfire, it would probably be upsetting. So what can you do about it?
This is another thing that's actually come to my attention in some of my communities. People hear gunfire, but they're not calling the police. If you hear something and suspect that it is gunfire, please give us a call. We'll try to figure out safely where it's coming from or what's going on, that type of thing. But also with gunfire, the sound tends to carry. So it may not actually be as close as you believe it to be. Another thing, you are allowed to fire a gun as long as you're 50 yards from a roadway. So, and that's another thing to consider. But please remember, if you hear these things or you see these things, you have to call the police. I had one of my communities to tell me, well, I heard the gunfire and I didn't see the police, so I just figured everything was okay.
It's terrible.
Right. So if you hear gunfire, please, we're not always in that particular area. Call us, let us know what you heard, if it's the number of gunshots that you can identify, but please don't assume that someone else has called the police or that we already know what's going on. Just take a moment and please dial 911.
Okay, and
Yeah, I want to make a comment on that. I know I hear all the time. I've got a Ring camera, and so I'm in the Ring neighborhoods, and all the time I'll see stuff like, "Oh, just heard gunshots fired," and usually the post is like, "Well, did you call the police?" And it's like, "Well," and I've even forwarded those over to the chief Doran, and you know, he's like, "Well, looking at the records, and I don't see anybody who's called about it." So, you know, it's again, please do call 911 and take advantage of that. They would much rather have it be nothing than it, you know, again, not have any data on that, because at least, you know, if they've got multiple calls from around the area, they can kind of figure out where it is roughly. So it does help the more calls they have.
that's good. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to ask you how to become a COPS neighborhood and what the advantages of becoming a COPS, to become part of your program for the COPS program.
Okay, so you can actually pull up the application online by logging into www.gwinnettcounty.com. And if you type COPS into the search engine, it'll pull you to the page that provides all of the information that you need and what's required for the COPS program. After you complete your application online, your application gets forwarded to Corporal Eric Rooks, who's the coordinator over the COPS program. Once you're in contact with Eric, he's going to send you a survey. The survey has to go to each occupied residence within your subdivision. And you're also going to have to provide a map with the street names and the numbers. So 50% of that subdivision has to agree to participate in the COPS community to become a COPS community. Let's see, after you receive your 50% participation and we have the maps, you're going to host 3 meetings with Corporal Rooks. And after that, you're turned over to me to become part of the COPS program. So the requirements to maintain your COPS status: each year you have to have 1 meeting with me. You have to attend the Fall Festival, which usually occurs at the end of September or beginning of October. We'll see if it happens this year. But it's a very fun event, and it's not just for liaisons and block captains. It's for your community, your family, your friends, your coworkers. It's a huge event where everything dealing with Gwinnett County is there. So our vehicles, our helicopters, our healthcare workers, everything. So it's a very fun event. And the third requirement is a community event. The community event is for that subject. It's for you to decide what you want to do. I have one community that has, what's the football? What's the February football game?
I don't know. I'm not a football fan.
I don't. But you know what I'm talking about. They have
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
every year their community hosts a Super Bowl party. So everyone comes together and they have a potluck and they just enjoy the day and watch football. So that's just one example of how the COPS program works. It works on bringing the community together. So you get to know who your neighbors are, because a lot of people don't know who their neighbors are, not even next door. So you'll recognize your neighbors. It helps you to get to know the norm in your neighborhood. If you know who your neighbors are, you know who's supposed to be in the neighborhood. So if something doesn't look right, or if someone's wandering around and you know that person doesn't live at Miss Pat's or Pittman's residence, we know to call the police. Another thing with the COPS program, it teaches you to recognize the problems in your community, and we can develop ideas to try to solve these problems. Like we said, with the speeding or the people running the stop signs and the junk cars, we can communicate and figure out, hey, what can we do to help the community to make it more safe, that type of thing. Also, with the COPS community, it establishes obviously a relationship with your police department. So you actually have a contact. If you have a question or a concern, you can call and ask me. And I also host events with my COPS communities. We have a coffee with a cop. I was gonna work on cops and cupcakes at a bakery, that type of thing, or we might have a pizza with the police, where you can come out with us and just have coffee, have pizza, you can ask questions, or just meet some of the officers within your community and jurisdiction.
Okay, wait, I just have to tell a story on myself. We're in the COPS neighborhood, and somebody was trying to get into my neighbor's house across the street, and were wearing a heavy coat and a stocking cap, and I called the police, and the dispatcher said, call the number and see if anybody answers. And it turned out I called on the lady that owns the house. But I did call. Okay, so I have one last question.
That's a great thing, because a part of the COPS program, you're paying attention. Something didn't seem right, and like I said, we would rather have you call and it's absolutely nothing than it turned out to really be a burglar. And another advantage for the COPS program, I actually do area checks in all of my COPS communities. Right now I have 63 COPS communities, and I take the time out to try to ride through and wave. If you see me, you can ask a question, but I do constant area checks within my COPS communities. So that's another way to get those area checks that you may not normally get if you weren't a part of the COPS program.
Okay, and I have one last question. What does the police department do that you feel you do not get enough credit for?
I would like to ask my Major Trap McDowell. Would you be able to answer that question?
I can. So again, hey, I'm Major McDowell. I am the South Precinct Commander. I think I heard her telling on me that I went to Parkview many, many years ago. In fact, I used to live in Henry Estates right around the corner from Kate there back when I was growing up. So yeah, I'm a lifelong resident of the area of Gwinnett County, and I've been here over 31 years now. So Selena, thank you, great job. So as far as what the Gwinnett County Police Department, what you people don't appreciate enough, I guess, is, there always seems to be not enough cops for your neighborhood, and that's probably one of the biggest complaints that I get. So the reality is that my guys do a really good job. They just really haven't mastered the art of being more than one place at the same time. So despite the fact that they do a really good job and they go from call to call to call and work traffic occasionally and pull you over even occasionally, I think sometimes that people sometimes only see the bad things that if they get the ticket or if it took us a little too long to get to a call. So just please keep that in mind, that they also have to combat the traffic in the South Precinct. So I sometimes hear from people about my officers speeding a little fast, but generally speaking, that's because they're trying to get to your call and trying to help. So hopefully that's not too bad of a case. Do you think that answers your question there, Kate?
Well, yeah, I thought I'd give you an opportunity to, to talk about stuff that from your side point of view.
Yeah, I made a couple of notes while Selena was talking, so I'd like to actually expound upon a couple of things if I could. So we talked a little bit about the city of Lilburn and Gwinnett County. Lilburn is one of the cities in the county that has their own police department. We actually work very close with them. Bruce Headley's a friend of mine, the chief over there. We actually share the same 911. We occasionally even operate on the same radio channel. So we do operate very closely together. So having folks inside of Lilburn, having somebody in the county is really not that big a deal. We typically communicate very well and work together. I heard talking about traffic and speeding and those things, and those are actually my #1 complaint at the South Precinct for the last 2.5 years. Seems to be the top 3 at least is the amount of traffic, the speeding, and the violations that people see on a constant basis. So while I would like to be able to tell you that everybody's going to behave, obviously they are not. You guys right now have seen for the last couple of months a decrease in the amount of traffic, which can be good or bad depending on the situation. The reality is now that people are seeing that there's a little bit of a gap, they are in fact taking advantage of that. We're seeing quite a few one-car wrecks where people are speeding, making up where they're going because they now have a lot more open road than they used to have. So those have picked up. So last year I did actually, and the other precincts don't do this, is I actually assigned 2 officers to working traffic complaints and handling these types of calls, since I seem to get about 3 times as many as the other precincts get, although they have them as well. The motor unit also comes down periodically, usually about once a week, and helps concentrate on some of our problem areas. So in addition to my officers that are out there routine, the routine stuff, officers working it directly, and I get help from the motor unit who comes down as well and helps me out with those kinds of things. I heard you talking about the center lane violations, and yes, I get complaints about that on Killian Hill and Indian Trail and Five Forks are the places I get those kinds of complaints. And I've actually myself have caught and ticketed a couple people for doing those. I know it's not fair, I'm in an unmarked car, but still, if they do it, they're getting a ticket. So we do watch those things. My traffic guys are looking for the areas where we know that they're doing it. Over there by Mountain Park is one of the areas that we see it. Also down at Five Forks, down towards Ronald Reagan, we also see a lot down there. So we are watching those areas, in fact. You talk about putting up the barriers. Well, you can put up those plastic barriers, but generally speaking, they don't last very long because they tend to get run over, and we're not going to put up a physical barrier. So probably one of the best things we can do is try and catch them, and we do work on that. Selena didn't know much about the drag racing because she wasn't working when the last event happened, the one we were talking about out there in Park. We actually were able to make some arrests that night and issue some tight citations because unbeknownst to them at the time that they were out there doing it, I had major wire down on 78, which blocked off a lot of the roadway. So we ended up actually being able to stop a few because they weren't actually to escape. Gwinnett and other areas in the county are, and other areas in the metro Atlanta area are experiencing a huge increase in the drag racing. And so we are involved actively right now in gathering intel off social media and making plans to combat that. So you've seen that City of Atlanta got into it a weekend or 2 ago, and we're going to be doing the same kinds of things. So we are actively working that. I heard talking about the discharging of firearms, and that's a pretty common call. We really run into about 3 types. One is folks who go off the back porch and they're celebrating, New Year's kinds of things. We actually have a lot of that here in Gwinnett. Not as much in the South Precinct, but over in the Central Precinct, we see it quite a bit. So that's one type. Obviously, we want to be called on those kinds of things. The other type is where people obviously are misbehaving in parking lots and doing other things. And so obviously we can't stress enough, call us. The third type is the ones that are out there in the woods and shooting, target practice, sometimes hunting, whatever it might be. Although we appreciate the call, keep in mind that we probably are not going to be able to do a whole lot about that. And I think I also heard talking about, I think the concern is when do we call 911? Well, something, although we would ask that people, if you need directions, 911 is probably not the best use of that system. We get a lot of that too. Approximately, between 70 and 80% of the calls that come in to the 911 center are actually not probably of a true emergency nature. So, but again, it still is usually the fastest way for us to tell what's going on. We get to your location, even if you don't know where it's at, and we can call you back because of the systems in place to track where the calls are coming from. So we would appreciate that. Using the non-emergency when you can, but if you need to call 911 and it's in progress, we certainly would appreciate that as well.
Yeah, in 2018, both my husband, I called 911 when my husband fell out of a tree, and so not only the police, but the that got called over to the fire department, and we live right down the street from it. It's awesome. And then like 4 months later, I had asymptomatic pneumonia and passed out from blood poisoning. So I got a ride in an ambulance, and I think 911 is a pretty cool thing.
It works.
It works. So, well, is there anything else? Does anybody want to ask a question? You can unmute yourself and ask it. Okay, Yvonne, you're on.
Hi, I want to ask about a neighbor that leaves at a certain time in the morning. It's a teenage boy, I think, and he might be on his way to school, but he's very regular, and he's got a terribly loud muffler, or it's broken. So it really blasts. It used to be against the law. Is there any way he can be warned? I don't really want to pay a fine.
Well, it actually still is against the law, although we have noticed that, there's so many people doing it. It's not a very common ticket right now, but we are, especially with all the racing that's going on right now, looking at to get back into doing more enforcement on the illegal exhaust. If there's a regular time and place, if you could call up to the precinct and talk to a supervisor or my assistant, Autumn, who was working there every day, what I will do is we'll take the information, and that's the kind of thing that I send my traffic units out and see if they can catch.
Well, like I said, I really don't want the kid to have to pay a fine for it. I just want to.
Most of the time, we'll just reissue warnings in most cases, and that's fine. We understand that too. But,
okay.
Does anybody else have a question?
I had a question. I was a little concerned about the fact that we would tolerate speed at 15 miles over the speed limit. The neighborhood is 25 miles an hour. I can't imagine somebody coming down through our neighborhood doing 40 miles an hour, especially with kids playing and other people on bicycles.
That is a concern.
Go ahead.
Well, that's a concern. The state many years ago placed those rules in place, put those rules in place for departments that were operating speed traps. So they would not give you the 500 feet. They would write for 5 miles an hour over. And so the state made all kinds of limitations on us being able to use basically stationary speed detection devices. So they put that in place. So yes, is 36 or more a little? Is it too fast? Yes, it is. If it's your neighborhood, it certainly is. Unfortunately, with the restrictions that we have, it is sometimes tough for us to write just 12 and 13 over and try and catch those particular ones. Like I said, we are not strictly limited to writing 15 or more over, but as a practical matter, that's what we end up doing, because one is because of the way the law is written, and two is, well, because unfortunately there's a lot of people speeding, and for us to go after the ones that are doing 11 and 12, we do miss the ones that are doing 17, 18, or 19, or even more. So we do have to make some choices about who we pull over in those kinds of settings. Most neighborhoods, we love to be able to run it, but it really is problematic because of the rules as far as being approved for running the speed detection, distances involved, and the fact is, if I'm sitting in your neighborhood, everybody knows that they can see us from a long ways away.
Yeah, I mean, I could almost see the 15 miles an hour over on Rock Bridge or Five Forks or one of those main arteries. I just had concern about neighborhoods in general. So that was my question, but that's a good answer. I understand.
When we run the speed detection devices, the monitors where we actually gather the data, most of the places, what I call not just the neighborhoods, because I do put them back in the neighborhoods, even if I can't legally run it and write a ticket, I can still gather the data as far as who's coming in and out and speeding and all that kind of stuff. And obviously, the cut-through roads as well. What I'm running into with the South Precinct is it's not always just a speeding problem, although there are occasional speeders. What we tend to find is that there's just so much volume, especially, and looking around, I see some folks here, probably a lot of you guys have been living in Gwinnett for a long time. I've been here since the 70s. So, from 70,000 people or whatever it was in 1972, almost 1 million people now in 2020, we've seen a lot of growth. So the roads that people used to live on that nobody came down, 100 cars a week, you're now seeing 2, 3, 4,000 cars a day in many cases going down those roadways. And so any volume, obviously a volume problem, and if everybody's doing 5 or 10 miles an hour over and you're trying to back out of your driveway, it's very difficult. And that's what I'm saying. I get those complaints on a weekly basis. Ross Road, Lake Lucerne, Tom Smith, all those crossroads where there's actually, they have 35 mile an hour, 45 mile per hour speed limits, but a lot of people actually live right on the roadway.
Anybody else have a question?
I did. I had a question about fireworks, since we're getting into the hot holidays. Is there like a time limit that they can't shoot the fireworks off after a certain time at night?
In the state of Georgia, they've approved a lot of different fireworks laws in the last couple of years. They are now allowed during the week to shoot them off till 11, and on the weekend and holidays until midnight. And in fact, even on 4th of July and New Year's, I think it even goes till a little later, I think till 1 in the morning.
All right, thank you.
Didn't say I liked it, but it certainly is the law right now.
Okay. Anybody else?
I got a couple of questions. Have you seen any good feedback from the cameras that are in the school zone, especially the one that I know is over by Arcado Elementary? And the other thing, I'm recently moved to Gwinnett from DeKalb. I'm over here on Cole, right from Parkview. But I know in DeKalb, a lot of the cruisers, you'll see them with the marker lights on the light bars, just to give a visual point of preference or point of reference, so that people are aware. Is that SOP for Gwinnett for the cruisers when they're out on a patrol? To have the the speed, you talk about the camera, you talk about the speed cameras that they've put up over there at the elementary school? Correct. The third party came in and put the cameras up. It's a speed camera. Little white.
The schools are testing, right. The schools are testing those out right now. My understanding is that they will be expanding that program. I don't get to see that data that actually goes through the schools right now. We've used stoplight cameras in the past with mixed success. You probably see in the future at some point, I would imagine you'd also see speeding cameras out in the regular roadways. But right now, that's a school program, and they're the ones that are handling that. As far as the marker lights, yes. We started experimenting with that last year, and hopefully we're continuing to do that. Part of the issue we run into is, of course, we want people to know we're out there. At night, how do you see us? Well, those blue marker lights, what we call the patrol lights, we're encouraging all our officers to use them as much as possible. If they're sitting there trying to catch a speeder, it's probably not the best thing to keep on. But when they're out, doing their area checks and cruising through your neighborhood, we certainly want people to see that we're out there. So a lot of jurisdictions have gone to using those patrol lights. So you will see those more and more as our officers getting to the habit of actually regularly using them at night.
Yeah, that's what I saw in DeKalb, was when a patrol officer was making a pass through a neighborhood. You didn't mistake it as a car going slow, as when you see the marker lights on it, you're able to tell that, yes, that is an officer on patrol doing his duty.
and you can see them a long ways away. So if I'm cruising down Salmon and I'm doing an area check in a parking lot, down at Kitty Hill, you can actually see a long ways away. So obviously, bad guys know we're out there actively patrolling, and that's one of the ways we make kind of that force multiplier for us to make sure people are seeing us and know we're there.
So not flashing in your rearview mirror, you're okay.
No, only if we need to.
So is there anybody else have a question?
I have not a question, but a statement. Major and Corporal, you probably don't hear it enough, but thank you. You all do a great job. I've had enough opportunities to interact with officers on the patrol here in the area, and I mean, it's super professional. I have nothing to complain about your department and the way it's run here in our precinct. I don't spend a lot of time in the others, but thank you for doing a great job and for risking your lives all the time too.
Thank you.
Well, I can't say that I do a lot of the work. I know Selena and my other officers, they're the ones out there mostly on a regular day and being visible. And I do get to watch their body worn camera from time to time. And I am amazed at how good they are doing and how well they handle it. And you guys would probably be amazed at how some of the people that we have to deal with are not always very nice or as nice as you are, especially.
I have a quick question. Wondering how many officers there are in the South Precinct.
Right now, I have 78 sworn officers assigned to the precinct, and that includes me.
Thank you.
It's a good question. Thanks. Okay. So if nobody has any other questions, before you go, we're going to post it next week, but we'd like you not just to participate in this, which is wonderful, but to have some input as we form an association. You don't have to volunteer. You wouldn't believe it, but I am a commitment phobe, and here I am doing this. But you don't have to commit a whole lot of time, but if there's something you could do, one of the things we want to do, as Ben suggested, was to incorporate as a official association, nonprofit association. So, and I don't have a clue how to go about that, and I really don't want to add that to my list, but somebody out there or somebody you know has done it before or knows something about it, and we could use the help. And also, like the next meeting, or this meeting, Mike Osowski said he would take notes so that we could post this information, and it'll be on our website. But maybe next meeting, somebody else would, you don't have to be a secretary or anything if you just are willing to take the notes so that we can share, because I don't multitask very well. And anyway, but we've had a lot of people help us. And then of course this pandemic has slowed us down. But after I got over it and then I talked to Mike and John, and I can't see everybody that's here that I know, and Lauren, we just decided that, we don't want to let the ball drop. There's some changes happening in the neighborhood. In Mountain Park, what we normally think of Mountain Park, which is Five Forks and Rockbridge, I probably am more sensitive to it than other people. I mean, I say everybody, but I'm an engineer. And so I'm just look at these lots. I come out of the swimming pool. I go to the swimming pool, and I've noticed like there's 7 lots there that somebody's going to come in, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but somebody's going to come in, and next time you go, all those trees are going to be gone, and there'll be something, a strip mall, I have no idea what, but something will be there. And so we were thinking, I was thinking, and I talked to other people, we have Mountain Park's kind of got this little air of a little village. How can we keep it that way and see that it happens in the future, that new buildings, new things have kind of a theme? I'm not necessarily going to name what the theme should be, but talking to Ben and talking to people in planning and development, they have something called an overlay district, which is for commercial areas. It's not, be things like plantings and sidewalks. Oh, and that's another thing I want to get to is sidewalks. But just things of maybe how it looks, so that it continues to look like a little village. And then we could continue that to Five Forks and Killian Hill. And there's some things that have been built. For instance, if you're familiar with where Three Blind Mice is, that little shopping center is very nice. And as things come in, it'd be nice to have some sort of a theme instead of just a willy-nilly, just a place that people drive through fast. You can kind of be nice to where you drive down the street and you say, we must be in Mountain Park because it looks nice and it feels nice. So one of the things about sidewalks, John Strange, who's on here somewhere, had written up a letter to the Department of Transportation, and then I also did. And we're kind of, it's just there's an awful lot of sidewalks, and right around this area, they don't necessarily connect. There's a lot of sidewalks on both sides of the streets, but right in this area, there's a lot of places where they don't. And if the sidewalks don't connect or don't go to the commercial areas, then it seems kind of like a waste of sidewalk. So we're working with the county to identify where sidewalks should go with the goal that we could connect this area. But I also was looking, we have 5 county parks between Ronald Reagan Parkway, right at Ronald Reagan Parkway, and Mountain Park Aquatic Center. We have 5 county parks. We have had 2 libraries. And so this is so that's actually 3 shopping districts, commercial districts. Almost all of it's got sidewalks, but it's not connected. If it was connected, we could sort of morph this into a walkable community. And that would be nice. And then the Mountain Park thing with all the parks, that's a good theme. I mean, we're right at the foot of Stone Mountain, which I'm a geologist, and I have to tell you, Stone Mountain is world famous in the world of geology. So people know what Stone Mountain is, and they come here to see it. And we're lucky because, yes, it's not in our county, but it's right there. And also the Smoke Rise area, they're using this time of the pandemic, I've been told, so I don't know who told me this, that they have a little greenway, and they're putting a parking lot in and enhancing their walkability in their park. And then also we have the city of Lilburn that has an awesome park, an awesome greenway, and a library right there. So for my house, I have 3 libraries that are equidistant. So there's a lot of things to preserve, but in the 20 years I've lived here, I have seen things come that were just kind of ugly buildings. Rite Aid drugstore being one of them. I can talk bad about them because they're gone, but they left their store. And then things that need to have their parking lots paved. Publix has been real good about keeping their parking lot up, but there's other areas, and I understand. I mean, I don't know the details. This isn't time to go into it, but the county does have programs to work with people that own businesses to upgrade. And anyway, we just want to work on that. And I can't do it myself. I'm not a multitasker, and I really don't have the best health to do it, but I'm pretty passionate about it, obviously, because I asked you all to come. And I really appreciate you coming. And Corporal Francis, I really appreciate you doing that. And you too, Major McDowell, thank you so much. And I know I'm looking at the camera, but I'm looking at your faces. So anyway, thank you very much. Does anybody want to say anything? Maybe Ben, do you have any final thing?
Kate, this is Betsy.
Yes.
We might be able to help you with some of the stuff you want to do. Do I just respond back to the emails I've gotten to get to you?
It'll go, the way it's now, it'll go to Mountain Park, the Mountain Park email, but if you address it to me, it will get sent to me. And that's the thing, we have some volunteers. There's a woman, I don't think she's here today because she just got a job that's at night. Wanda, what's her name, McMullen? She volunteered to take care of the emails, and that was like burdening me, but she will get back to me and tell me. So okay. Yes. And so that'd be great. And what's your last name, Betsy?
Wilson?
Okay. Well, I look forward to hearing from you. And,
Okay. And thank you, Selena and Major McDowell.
And anybody else? Well, I hope that you'll, that even just coming to the meetings, we're going to have, I think next week, we're going to have like just organizational meeting, trying to get this together. You are all invited to come and just watch and talk. It doesn't matter, to be part of this as we put it together. Please do. You don't have to sign up to be president or secretary or anything. Just come. And the commissioner has offered to use his ability to set up a Zoom meeting for us to have Zoom meetings, and we won't get cut off. Right now we don't have any money. So we've been using Zoom meetings and say you got 40 minutes and then they shut you off. So anyway, please I'll send it out on the email. And if you are not on the email list, please send us your email so that you'll know about it. And that's really all I send the email out, is a notification of meetings. So anyway, does anybody else have any final words?
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to say thank you all for being here and participating. Can't wait to see what this becomes with all this effort. But it's exciting, and this is really a start to a great thing. So, and thank you, Kate, for continuing to champion this and push it forward.
You're welcome.
Well, in some ways it highlights the need countywide to have some standards so that, we're putting in sidewalks, that we're looking at having walkability, that we're looking at building codes and all these things. And I know there's a lot out there. So, if you go up to some of the places like Beaufort or Duluth, they're very specific about what you need to do. If you want to build a business in Beaufort, you have to put in a sidewalk. It's part of it, or you don't build. You have to build it with, I believe, it's brick or maybe stucco. So they have a very specific building code so that you get that homogeneity in terms of the building. And so it's worth considering, and for a mountain park to be able to build something like that, I'm excited about what we're trying to do in Lilburn, to make it a place where you can go and you can walk around and you can go to stores and you can live, and all the things that make for a good quality of life. And I love, Kate, you mentioned the park, and the library, so it's exciting to see.
A lot of people. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So Ben, can you talk to that a little bit? Because I imagine Beaufort falls within a city limit. So the city of Beaufort probably sets those standards. As we've discussed, a lot of Mountain Park is unincorporated. So Ben, can you talk a little about how that could be?
I can. And actually the county does have a unified development ordinance, and it does require any new businesses and any new subdivisions and residents to put in sidewalks. So that is there, however, we can't go back and require people who already have their houses built to implement sidewalks. And that's one of the double-edged swords of being such a established community as Mountain Park, is that there's a lot of things that are grandfathered in and did not make it into the when they were developed, that those codes were not in place. So definitely any new development that comes in the Mountain Park area will come in with sidewalks, and that is part of our code now.
Okay. Well, I hope to see you next week. I'll send out an email, and I hope that you guys, we might get good at this Zoom thing. I think we did a pretty good job. So thank you so much. And
thank you all for joining us.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you much. Appreciate it.
Hi. Hi, Patricia.
Thank you.
I think the police department did a very nice job. You did a nice job, Selena. Thank you. Bye.
She usually does good work.
Yeah, and it's nice to see. It's nice to meet you. And I might even recognize you if I saw you in public.
Well, I mean, since you live down
You're
right from where I used to live, but
you've
only been there 20 years.
I've only been here 20 years, yeah. I'm kind of new. Okay, well, I'll let you all go. And this is my mom, Yvonne Pittman. And
I figured.
okay, thank you very much, you guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Kate. We'll be talking to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you, Corporal and Major.
Good night, sir. Where's my? Oh, here it is.
Well, Ben, yeah, am I
Yes.
still talking to you? Did we? I forgot to mention this. Did we record this?
It is recording, and I will see. Last time I tried to pull the recording, it was a little awkward, but I didn't quite. It was just showing the active speaker, so I don't know if it's going to do that or if it's going to actually show everybody.
That's fine.
So.
That's fine. Okay, thank you very much. I really appreciate you putting this together.
Sure.
Good night.
And let me know when next week you want that meeting to be, and I'll schedule it and just so that way it'll be available.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. You have a nice night. I guess.
You too.